Hey, what's up, speech class? My name is Professor Matthews, and I will be walking with you this semester in the next 15 weeks as we explore the spoken word and specifically speech. And I know it's not a class that any of us are excited about taking, and that's interesting if you think about it, because we spend most of our lives communicating. This is the thing that we desire the most to communicate with others. This is the way that we measure the health of our relationships and friendships, our ability to communicate with them effectively. If somebody isn't communicating with us, or we struggle to communicate with them, we usually define that relationship as being difficult or a struggle. Um, I guess what I mean to say is that we exist as humans to communicate, to live life together, to share things with each other. And so it's sort of an interesting thought that speech, public speaking, would strike so much fear into our hearts. It makes us feel anxious, and I think what has happened is we fear the unknown. We fear how people might be, perceiving us, what people might be thinking about us. We don't want to make a fool of ourselves, and all of those feelings are understandable, and I think they come with the territory of it just being a new practice. All right. So we're going to try to tear down those walls, not necessarily by addressing them, but just by putting into practice what are some things that we can do to be more prepared. And even though this is a speech class, we're not going to focus so much on prepared speeches. When I say prepared, I mean just understanding the value of spoken word, right? Understanding the power our voice has, believing that we have something important to share with other people. That is really, really valuable. And the deeper of an understanding we have of how valuable it is to be able to express your feelings, express your knowledge, to connect with other people, and just the power of the spoken word in general, I think it really gives us an opportunity to work through some of those struggles, to get to the benefits of the spoken word language. So, when we think of a word, we think of, generally speaking, we think of a written word, right? If I were to ask you what a word is, you might say it's a series of letters. You might tell me about the ABCs. You might write something on a board. So this is kind of how we have grown into thinking about words. But words are actually just sounds. Okay? Think about before the written language existed in oral cultures and purely oral cultures, which there was a time when all of us were just oral cultures, meaning that language was only sound. We had no way of writing it down. That came years later when we began to create these symbols that connected to specific types of sounds. So when you think of a word is purely a sound. And there's a guy who named Walter Ong who's done some extensive research and written extensively about how we interact with words differently when we understand them to be sounds primarily, okay? Because spoken language is tied to sound. It is temporary. Think about how temporary a word is when you speak it. It is experienced moment by moment. So that makes the spoken word very dynamic and alive. Think about a great conversation you've had with somebody recently. Think about how much better, how much more effective that conversation was in person than it might have been, let's say, through a text message. A text message is a series of symbols that we have to interpret, right? And we are disconnected from language then. If we are having to read something from a screen, that means there is distance. From me to you, there is distance, right? So when we're reading something, we are reading letters at a distance from us. But sound is, it surrounds us, right? You could point the other way or turn your body away from me right now, and you would still hear me speaking because sound converges on us. So we are immersed in sound. So what that means is sound literally enters us. So remember, I'm talking about language here. So spoken language, language as sound enters us. There's vibrations happening in our eardrum, and it creates an immediate visceral connection. So oral cultures, before there was writing, literate cultures, when people would communicate, it would be an event. It would be like a significant moment because you are experiencing communication. The only way that people understood how to communicate, which is through the words, which were sounds. So, like I said, you can feel these sounds. And so these sounds weren't just words that had meaning, they had power. A spoken word was an event. It engages us fully. It is emotional. It engages us cognitively, socially. We come together to share these sounds, this language. And so it's almost like a performance, right? When we're speaking to somebody, they're speaking to us, we're going back and forth and we're participating in sharing these sounds, and it creates these bonds, right? Because sound is something you can feel. So when we're talking about spoken word language, it's something that we actually experience within us. All right. It's not disconnected from us like letters are, like symbols are. When we write the language down, we become disconnected from it. We look at it as a distance. And so um, writing is very visual, we're detached from it. And so what we're talking about here in speech is the spoken language. What power does the spoken language have? Why is it so important now that we are effective at expressing our ideas with spoken word, with sound? Because sound is always going to be more emotional and more powerful than the written word, because you cannot disconnect spoken sounds from the speaker and the context. Meaning that for every sound you hear me speak, you can't disconnect it from me. You see my face, you see my smile, or you see my frown. Or if I'm sad, you hear my sadness. And so you begin to experience my sadness with me. Or if I'm really, really excited, you hear my excitement and you see my excitement. So you begin to see and experience that excitement with me. Research shows that when a really great storyteller begins to tell a story, that his audience connects with him or her or them through brain waves called neural coupling. That the speaker and the audience during the story, their brain waves begin to flow at the same frequency. It was as if we were created to share with each other stories through our own voices, to share our feelings. Whatever you believe about where we came from and who created us and why we were created the way that we have been created, you can't deny what the research shows. And that shows that sound as language is powerful. You can't disconnect it from the human, and that you begin to experience the same emotions that I do, that I'm expressing, because our brain waves begin to connect and flow at the same frequency. And so something really powerful happens here. You begin to identify with me as a human. And all communication, it exists so that we are able to express some deeper ideas about ourselves. Think about the first people who existed. What reason might language have played? Did we need to have spoken word in order to uh, show how to farm or to show how to hunt? No, right? If I'm in a culture, let's just for the sake of conversation, if I'm in a culture that has no spoken word language, and I want to show you how to hunt, what would I do? I would just show you. I would mimic it, through my action, my body actions, my body language, right? If I was going to show you how to do anything or teach you how to do any sort of action, I could just mimic it. You would learn by mimicking. So, what utility does spoken word have? Why did the original people who existed on this earth, or why did they develop a spoken language even? What good, what tool was spoken language used for? Researchers say that it was probably to share the stories within them, to talk about their feelings, things that you can't share without expressing something deeper. So, language really derived out of a necessity to express what we're thinking and what we're feeling, our inner lives, and to share the stories of things that have happened to us, the past, right? And so there is a powerful, powerful thing happening within every time that you speak to someone verbally. That's not happening within text messages. All right. I'm not saying that the literacy, when I say literacy, I mean the written language, is has its own separate power. We can study written language. We can think analytically about it. We can go over it again and again. But spoken language is here. The sound, the word only exists as long as the sound does, right? So it's so temporary. It's here, then it's gone. It's more about an emotion and more about connection. So every time that you speak a word to someone, it has this personal and relational weight. It has this emotional power, right? Every people remember those words, and it's all about um, it's all about remembering not just the words spoken, but how they were spoken, remembering the person who spoke them. So I guess I'm probably repeating myself a little here. I just want you to understand and sort of drive home this idea that language primarily is sound. The written language, literacy is symbols that represent sounds. All right. So words are sounds. Sounds are powerful because they reverberate, they converge on us. So what I mean by converge is that sound always finds us. We cannot run from sound. We can close our eyes and be blind to something or turn the other way. If I have a word written on the wall, but I turn the other way, I cannot see the written version of that word. But a sound I cannot turn away from. So a sound literally converges on us. We experience it, and we cannot disconnect it from the person who created the sound. So it's very emotional, and it is an actual experience. When you're listening to a speaker that you are very interested in, or somebody that you're dating or that you've just met who's interesting, you feel the words because you're experiencing them in that person. And what's happening is the words in that person become inseparable, and that moment, that event resonates with you within your whole body. You literally experience language as a full body experience. And what this does, it fosters these really deep connections between the person speaking and you, because sound bridges that gap between you and that person, right? And so very, very powerful. And so Walter Ong, he argued that language as sound was very, very human because it was tied to your physical body and tied to your senses. He argued that sound created a relational presence. It comes from one person, it moves towards us, and it engages with us. We don't have to necessarily interpret that sound because we experience that sound as a full person. Think about how difficult it is sometimes when you receive a text message. and it's disconnected from the person. You can't see their face. You're not hearing tone. You're not hearing the vibe, right? So you're left to interpret a text message. How often do you interpret it incorrectly? It's much more difficult to do when you're with someone and they're speaking a word and you see their face and you hear it and you experience it. That's why spoken connections, in person connections, are so much more powerful. All right. And so I want you guys to be reflecting and thinking about this idea of spoken language as a sound, as it being something that we experience. Understanding this idea, how different do you feel about the spoken word? And what do you think about the fact that technology, with every new piece of technology we get, it's creating more disconnection, right? I love technology. I'm making this video right now from an iPhone. A lot of you are taking this class online. And so technology is wonderful. It connects us in different ways. However, we don't get to experience the face-to-face connection, and we don't get to experience sound as such a personal connection. Even though you do hear me speak right now, and you're able to see my face, we are not having this moment together that allows us to connect on a deeper level. And ultimately, that's what we want. No matter where you are, a lot of you are in high school, just graduated high school. This is a freshman level, sophomore level college course. Some of you may be going back to school. It doesn't matter where you are. The takeaway from this, and what we're going to be exploring in this class is that sound as language fosters deep connection with other people. It allows us to influence people, to encourage people, to speak life into people. That's the whole idea here. All right. Is to leverage, to use spoken language as a way to make the world a better place. Because we can do the opposite. We can speak life out of things as well. It's to be more intentional about using our voices to seek out connections with people, to speak in public places, right? Because you have to believe that you were created with a certain set of passions and a certain set of ideas about how to make the world a better place. Your kindness, your thoughtfulness, your grace, and your love for people needs to be expressed. And it needs to be expressed with sound so people can experience it and experience you, and then experience the power of those things. So that's really what we're going to be exploring this semester. And we're going to be exploring a lot of that through storytelling, through really personal stories. So I believe that every speech, every presentation really is in itself a story. And if it not a whole story, there's parts of stories in there. So we're going to focus on telling stories as a way to connect with other people. And because if this class is online, which my assumption is that it is because you are viewing this video, most of our videos, all of our videos rather, are going to be, or all of our speeches rather, are going to be videos. So we're not going to get to experience the true power of sound as language, or language as sound rather, but we are getting to experience some of it. So you're going to be making videos this class. Some are going to be very short stories. Some are going to be a little bit longer, but we're going to practice this whole semester. We're going to practice expressing ourselves. We're going to practice the power of the spoken word. And hopefully by the end of the semester, you feel more comfortable and you have a deeper understanding of just how powerful the spoken word is and how much power you have to speak life into other people. So I'm excited about this semester. We are in week 1 this week, and we're going to move on to what is a story in week 2. and begin to learn about what the elements of a story are and why stories are so powerful and why language most likely was birthed out of the need to tell stories. So, thank you for listening, and it's going to be a good semester. All right, see you guys later.